Well, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has held a very important meeting with the Chief of Defence Staff, all three Defence Chiefs, over the Pahalgam terror attack. At least 26 people, including two foreign tourists, were killed by a group of terrorists on Tuesday, and this is being seen as one of the most deadly attacks on civilians in Jammu and Kashmir. This incident took place in Baisaran meadows in the upper reaches of Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir, and it is being seen as the worst terror attack in the last 30 years in J&K.
I think the key point that we do need to get into over here at some stage, and we aren't getting ahead of ourselves, but I think a couple of points which explain the gravity of the situation. India will respond. How India responds is something that will be decided. There will be no immediate decision perhaps. The Cabinet Committee on Security will assess what the overall situation is. India has a range of options available to us. There would be diplomatic options, there would be military options as well, and then within that military sphere there would be a range of options which are available. Remember, there is a precedent to this, which is why saying this is not untoward, particularly since both the Home Minister and the Prime Minister have said that India will respond to the attacks and they will take on the attackers. Therefore, remember what has happened in the past. We've had the surgical attacks which followed terror instances. We've had the Balakot attack which followed the terror attacks which took place, and this being very, very bad in terms of civilian casualties. There will be a response, but again, what will India do? Where will we strike? Will we strike at all? These are questions which are unanswered presently.
Important questions there. Home Minister Amit Shah was in Pahalgam today. He has also met with the victims of this attack and also survivors. He has said that India will not bend to terror. Prime Minister Modi cut short his visit to Saudi Arabia. In fact, he came back today morning, and immediately after coming back, he also held an important security meeting with the Foreign Secretary, Foreign Minister, and also Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor. Meanwhile, the Jammu and Kashmir government has announced rupees 10 lakh for every deceased family, rupees 2 lakh for seriously injured, and 1 lakh for injured victims. Prime Minister Modi is expected to hold a key meeting with the CCS in the second half of the day now, and this is when India is expected to formulate its response and defense strategy. It's the Resistance Front, which is a shadow group of the banned Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, which has claimed responsibility for this attack on tourists in Baisaran, which is an off-road meadow in South Kashmir's Pahalgam.
All right, let's go across now to reactions coming in on the ground. We've had several of NDTV's reporters reach out to the relatives of those who have lost their loved ones, their near and dear ones. These are tragic stories which reflect a horrific attack in Jammu and Kashmir. Let's listen in. All right, let's go straight across to Radhika, who's been tracking these reactions. Radhika, go ahead. You've been speaking to some of the family members. What are they telling you?
That's right. I did speak to several of the family members of the Panvel resident who unfortunately died in these attacks. There is one death from Panvel. There are 2 deaths from Pune and a few others from Dombivli as well. Almost 6 people have died from the state of Maharashtra. Of course, Chief Minister, Deputy Chief Minister in contact with the relatives, in contact with several who are left injured also in this incident. In fact, I'm standing outside Dilip's residence where, a lot of family members are gathered inside. We did speak to several of them in the past bulletins. All they want is justice. Of course, they want strict action against these perpetrators. It's very, very shocking indeed for these relatives. They've been talking about how they thought Kashmir was safe, which is why a 64-year-old Dilip went for a holiday with his wife, a 10-day holiday in Kashmir. This was the last thing any of their, relatives could even imagine, that they would be a target of terrorist attacks. So yes, a family is in shock. They are left with 3 children. Of course, he is left survived by his wife as well. Wife is at the moment in Kashmir. In fact, we believe that they've departed from Kashmir. They will be reaching Mumbai in a few hours from now. But certainly when we spoke to family members, they are in a state of distress. So it is difficult to really for them to really comprehend as to what has happened. But as far as the help and support for the family members are concerned, there are local police officials, who were manning this place. They are providing all kinds of assistance. State government is also providing assistance. And of course, several of the neighbors and family members here had been gathering since morning, sort of communicating their condolences to several of these family members. So yes, six innocent lives from Maharashtra have been lost in these unfortunate attacks. And of course, in the next few hours, the final rites will happen. Mortal remains will be sent. In fact, let me just show you the visuals of several of these family members, in fact, making their way into the residence. In a couple of hours from now, the final rites will take place, is what we are being given to understand. Of course, the mortal remains are on its way. Dilip's wife is also in that particular flight. She's almost about 60 years old. Dilip, 64-year-old retired professional. As you can see,
we'll come back to you in just a moment as you bring us these very powerful images of the home of one of the victims. But the breaking news coming in is a statement or a message from the Minister of Civil Aviation, who's asked airlines companies to avoid fare surges, because this has been a real concern. I've been monitoring the numbers. Airfares have gone up. The minister has said strict instructions have been given to airline companies: avoid fare surges. Fares must be monitored and kept at reasonable levels. We are looking at flights, of course, out of Srinagar. There have been 4 extra flights which have been announced. Why? Because, and this is particularly sad, Vasudha, that people in Jammu and Kashmir, scores of tourists are worried. It is understandable. They want to leave. They will have that opportunity. There have been additional flights of Indigo and SpiceJet, which have added. All airlines operating from Srinagar have waived cancellation and rescheduling charges as well. So if you are in Kashmir and you want to get out in Srinagar, the opportunity to get onto flights is there. Radhika, just carry on with what you were saying.
Pointing before, the last rites of Dilip, who lost his life in these ghastly terror attacks, who lived in Panvel, will happen in just a bit. In fact, his mortal remains are being transported as we speak. He's survived by his wife, who was also with Dilip when the terror attacks happened. Fortunately, she survived those attacks. She's not injured, is what we are being given to understand. In fact, when we spoke to several of these family members, here, these are the visuals of the scenes outside the residence. In fact, there are people gathered here, neighbors, relatives. We did manage to speak to some of them some time back. They are in a state of shock and distress. They just couldn't believe that, a 64-year-old retired professional could be target of terror attacks. And that's the last thing they could even imagine. And they spoke about how they thought and they assumed that Kashmir is a safe haven, is a beautiful holiday destination, and they had nothing to worry about. But of course, right now what they're seeking is justice, as far as these attacks are concerned, and that the perpetrators be brought to book. So that's the demand by the relatives, by people here. Let me just try and go across to somebody who's come here for... Sir, आप बात कर सकते हैं? आप दिलीप के दोस्त हैं?
नहीं, जरा मेहमान आए डेपो पे, उनको लेने जा रहा.
अच्छा, आप इनको जानते थे?
हाँ, हमारा रिलेटिव है ना.
अच्छा, आपने कब सुना कि ये क्या हुआ? क्या सुना आपने?
कल शाम को टीवी पे न्यूज़ सुनी थी, जब मालूम हुआ हमको.
आप मतलब क्या सुने आप? उनके वाइफ भी है अभी, उनके वाइफ
ने क्या सुने मतलब जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की तरफ से न्यूज़ दिया गया कि इतने लोग इधर के गए.
कुछ कम्युनिकेशन है एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की तरफ से अभी तक?
गए ना, एयरपोर्ट पे गए लोग.
एयरपोर्ट पे गए हैं. तो अभी कब है फाइनल राइट्स, लास्ट राइट्स कब है? आज शाम को है?
आज ही होएगा. आने के बाद एक आधा पौन घंटा रखेंगे बाद में.
आप क्या मैसेज देना चाहेंगे, क्योंकि ये टेररिस्ट अटैक है, बहुत ही शॉकिंग है?
यही कि दुनिया ने दिखा देना चाहिए कि सब जैसे वो एक टेररिस्ट मर जाता है तो वो लोग कितनी बड़ी भीड़ जमती है उनको विसर्जित करने में. वैसे ही लोगों ने दिखा देना चाहिए कि मॉब दिखाई देना चाहिए कि हम एक है ऐसा. बस तो वो गाड़ी निकालने गए।
Okay. All right. So that's the reaction we are getting from the relatives here, from the friends and relatives of Dilip. Of course, it's hard for them to express what they're feeling at this point. They are busy with the last rites that will take place in a couple of hours from now. The man who went on a holiday with his wife, or 10-day holiday as part of a tour. In fact, there were at least about 39 people who were part of this tour and travel program. And the man who went as part of this tour, comes back dead is something that the family members cannot believe. But last rites to happen in a few hours.
Absolutely, Radhika. Also, we understand. I mean, I was reading about this story of one family from Pune that was hiding in a tent when this terror attack started, and the men were asked to come out by the terrorists, and they were shot point blank. And that was indeed horrific, as is the story of each of these victims. Tell us a little bit about how the administration is looking at handling this crisis, especially because several of the victims are from Maharashtra. Vishnu was telling us about Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu's initiative in this, and he has already spoken to Eknath Shinde, the Deputy Chief Minister, is what I understand. Also, Devendra Fadnavis himself has spoken on terror. How is the administration looking at this? Because just a few days ago, we were celebrating the extradition of the Tahur Rana, and in some ways, we're all very happy about this intensified approach towards terror and the perpetrators of it.
All right, we'll come back to her in just a moment, but I've got a couple of more points, Vasudha, which have just coming in, related to what you were talking about. Between 6 a.m. and 12 p.m. today, Srinagar Airport handled 20 departures, 20 flights out of Srinagar today. It's a relatively small airport with 3,337 passengers. Not all of them would be tourists, but the large number of them perhaps would be. I would suggest that this is an exodus of tourists, and this is absolutely tragic. People deciding to leave Srinagar at this stage, or Kashmir at this stage. Let's go across to Uma Sudhir, who's also been talking to those related to people who've lost their lives. Uma, go ahead.
Vishnu, some of those people, in fact, who are there, were also talking about the surge in prices and speaking about a ticket from Srinagar to Hyderabad costing as much as 79,000 rupees. And very often, when you're going on a holiday, you're going with a family or you're going with friends, and therefore the costs that are working out are really huge. But yes, that sense of terror and panic and sadness, and you can no longer continue with that holiday, and therefore people wanting to return to their homes and to their family as well, and come to terms with this, something that has shocked the entire country. And yes, one person from Telangana.
Sorry,
Vishnu.
Uma, just a quick point. That surge pricing in the last 10 minutes, the Civil Aviation Minister has announced and has ordered airlines no surge pricing, all right? He's tweeted that out. So the airlines have been read the Riot Act. You cannot be charging 79,000 rupees for distressed people. It doesn't work that way. Not in a free market economy, not anywhere. But carry on with the point that you were mentioning.
Yes, you're right, because what I'm talking about is about a couple of hours earlier when that person indicated to me that these ticket prices were so expensive that flying back was also proving to be a challenge. Yes, in Hyderabad itself, Manish Ranjan, a young man with his wife and 2 children who had gone on a holiday, once again shot dead in front of the children and the wife as well. He belongs to Bihar and was working here for the last 2 years, and now his mortal remains are to be taken to his family in Sasaram in Bihar district. And in Andhra Pradesh again, we have this Chandramouli, a 17-year-old travel enthusiast, I must say. He and his wife Nagamani had gone along with 4 others to Pahalgam. And yesterday in the evening is when Nagamani reported to her brother saying that there has been a terror attack, it appears, and I'm not able to find Chandramouli, and can you help? And the police was trying to find out the details, and subsequently they came to know that Chandramouli has also been shot dead in this particular terror attack. And then there is another case of Madhusudan, who has also been killed from the Telugu states. He belongs to Andhra Pradesh as well. And subsequently, we have Nara Lokesh reacting very strongly, not just talking about the anguish of the horrific attack that has claimed 28 lives, and saying that his heart goes out to the bereaved families, but also asking for the dastardly act of violence, that it should not go unpunished. And he is expressing the confidence that with the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and Amit Shah ji will teach an unforgettable lesson to the perpetrators of this heinous crime, and that terror has no place in a civilized society. That's a sentiment that one is hearing again and again from people across the country. Everyone trying to come to terms with the kind of a shock of what has happened in Pahalgam, and then trying to recover from it. But then now also standing together. That's what the NDA partner, Telugu Desam President Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, has tweeted out, saying that we stand in solidarity with the Prime Minister and with the country, even as we mourn the loss of not just Chandramouli and Madhusudan and the others as well. And he's pointing out, with the voice of maturity of a politician who has several years of experience, that acts of terror are a stain on society, and history shows that terrorism and violence have never achieved anything meaningful for the causes they aim to promote, and therefore stand in solidarity with the PM and with the Union government in their commitment to safeguard our nation's sovereignty and responding to terrorism with firm and decisive action. Those responsible for this heinous act must be dealt with severely. This is something that everyone, I must say, is talking about, even as they are dealing with the pain of this loss and the shock that it has evoked throughout the country.
Absolutely. Andhra Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu was also there in Delhi yesterday. In fact, in the morning, he was amongst the first to reach out to Ram Mohan Naidu, in some ways his representative in New Delhi. He has spoken to him on not just ways to prevent surge pricing in flights, but also to ensure that there is proper facilitation for the bodies of the deceased to be brought back home. Let's also take a look at some reactions from chief ministers across states. In fact, there are ministers and MPs meeting victims, families, relatives, and ensuring that these families also get the kind of support that they deserve at times like this.
जम्मू कश्मीर में जो टेरर अटैक हुआ, उनका मैं गोवा सरकार की तरफ से और गोवा के लोगों की तरफ से मैं निषेध करता हूं। और जिस तरह से धर्म के आधार पर नाम पूछ के गोली चलाना, इसका तो मैं इस तरह का आतंकवाद भारत देश कभी सह नहीं करेगा। हम माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने इस टेरर अटैक के खिलाफ उनका जवाब देंगे, इनको शिक्षा मिलेंगी, और गोवा सरकार पूरे जम्मू और कश्मीर के लोगों के साथ है, जिनकी फैमिलीज का डिमाइस हुआ और जो लोग इंजर्ड हुए हैं उनको जल्दी से जल्दी रिकवरी हो, बस यही मैं प्रार्थना करता हूं।
काश्मीरमध्ये जो भ्याड हल्ला झाला त्याचा मी निषेध करतो, आणि जसं आपण सांगितलं की हल्लेखोरांना हे हवं आहे की आमचं आयुष्य हे डिस्टर्ब झालं पाहिजे, आम्ही थांबलो पाहिजे, पण भारत थांबणार नाही, आम्ही कोणी थांबणार नाही। आपलं जे काम आहे ते आपण करतच राहू, पण त्याच वेळी हल्लेखोरांना आणि हल्लेखोरांच्या पाठीमागे जे काही मास्टर माइंड असेल त्याला योग्य उत्तर भारत निश्चितपणे देईल, हा विश्वास मी व्यक्त करतो।
जो भी है, वैसे तो उनको गाड़ियों में गए होंगे या लेकिन स्टक हो गए हैं वहां पे, तो उनको वापस लाने के लिए या उनको सेफ वापस लाने के लिए हम जो है पठानकोट का बॉर्डर जो है वहां तक उनको लाके उसके बाद उनको घर पे छोड़ना, उनको वो हमारी जिम्मेदारी। वो ये देखो, उन्होंने ग्रेनेड जिन्ने भी आए ते अटैक हुए, सारे बंदे 24 घंटे के विच फड़े गए, तो उस तो बाद बंद हो गए। उन्होंने पता लग गया भी इतने तो नहीं चलना काम। हाँ, जे वो ना फड़े जाते तो शायद वड्डे क्राइम लिए तैयार हो जाते। तो इसके करके मतलब असी, क्योंकि पंजाब 532 किलोमीटर बार्डर है नाल, इधरों भी असी नाल जुड़े हुए हैं, तो असी ऑलरेडी पहला भी असी बहुत साल ये चल चुके हैं, जिस तरह उन्होंने कहा। सो असी अलर्ट है इस काम लिए, क्योंकि दुध दा फूकिया लस्सी नो भी फूका मारदा। फिर
घटनाक्रम में जिस प्रकार से देश के अंदर ये वज्रपात जैसा हुआ, और माननीय यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री, माननीय गृह मंत्री जी पाकिस्तान और उसके पिछलग्गुओं की इस कायराना हरकतों का जवाब देने के लिए पूरा देश एकजुट है और हमारी सरकार भी बहुत अच्छे प्रकार से प्लान करके इस पे बढ़ रही है। मैं मान के चलता हूँ कि दुख की इस घड़ी में हम सब मृतक परिवार के साथ भी हैं।
कश्मीर में एक बड़ा आतंकी हमला हुआ है और पूरा देश इस समय इस घटना के जो दुख है वो मना रहा है। इस प्रकार की घटना निंदनीय है। पर्यटक वहां घूमने गए थे, उन्हें ये आशा भी नहीं थी कि हम अपने घर वापस जा सकेंगे और जिस प्रकार की ये घटना हुई है, हिमाचल प्रदेश सरकार उन परिवारजनों के साथ है